Okay.
This is going to be.
So just to start off, I just want to put it out there that I want it to be the type of shiur where people feel comfortable to ask questions. Also, if the style of the shiur can change, so if I'd like feedback after the shiur, either directly through me or through Rabbi Yossi. Just if if the shiur is too basic, you want it more advanced, or a little bit, whatever it is. I'm very interested in hearing feedback, so that it should be in a way that people should feel comfortable and people should feel part of it. It's not just a monologue. I'm giving the shiur and everyone's listening. Okay, so before we start, just a few words of Hagdama. Maseches Makkos. Why does Maseches Makkos come after Maseches Sanhedrin? That's the general question, which one wonders. Why does Makkos come after Sanhedrin? So there's a general. What does Makkos talk about first of all? So Makkos means Malchus, and it's called Makkos because the third parak of Makkos, Elin Aloikin, talks about those different people who are Chai Malchus for the different averos that they do, and he goes through explaining the Seder of Malchus. But more specifically, the first parak talks about Edom Zoimim, and the second parak talks about Golos. So the question is a general question: why does Makkos come after Sanhedrin? But even if it's understood why Makkos in general comes after Sanhedrin, why Punkt Edom Zoimim comes immediately after Sanhedrin? Why does Makkos start off with Edom Zoimim? So the general question as to why Makkos comes out of Sanhedrin, Rishonim explain that Sanhedrin is talking about those. In fact, I think I saw some places that they say that Makkos is really part of Sanhedrin. It's really one Masechta. Discussion, one Masechta, two Masechtas. But either way, the reason why Makkos comes after Sanhedrin is talking about the different punishments that Sanhedrin give out. It starts with Malminus and Chayve Misa. And Makkos is really continuing that discussion of the different punishments that Sanhedrin administer to somebody who's done an Aveira. So that's what's after Misa. It's talking about Makkos. The question is, and you also have Golos, which is another punishment that Sanhedrin give out. The question more specifically is, why does Edom Zoimim come after Sanhedrin? So in fact, we'll see in the Gemara, right at the beginning of the Gemara already makes a connection between between Edom Zoimim and Sanhedrin. We'll soon see. But besides that, it's also brought down, I think, in the Ritva, that the connection is that the parish of Makkos is actually is by Edom Zoimim. The whole parasha we'll see in the face on the base. It's Dikos Asadik V'Shush Esharasha V'Ayim Bin Akos Rasha. The pasuk where we learn out Malchus in general is actually in the discussion. It's talking about Edom Zoimim as well, as we'll see on that base on the base. Okay, so that's just a small Dvarak Dom about why Makkos comes after Sanhedrin and why specifically Edom Zoimim. Right, it would make more sense to start off Makkos with the main subject, Edom Aloikin. If Makkos is talking about giving Makkos, so it should be start off with Edom Aloikin. Why are we starting off with Edom Zoimim? So one of the explanations given is that the pasuk where it talks about Malchus Bechlal, V'Hoyim Bin Hakos Rasha, we'll see that base on the base is also referring to Edom Zoimim. So that's the connection. But we'll see a more direct connection when we see the Gemara. Okay, so let's start inside. Says the Mishnah, Ketza the Edom Nasim Zoimim. How did the Edom become Zoimim? So I'm going to leave it open. Okay, to the Edom Nasim Zoimim. How did it become Zoimim? What do you mean become Zoimim? Because the Gemara is going to elaborate and tear it apart. So that straight away you see in Rashi, the Gemara is going to explain what it's saying. Why can't we just explain simple? How is the Edom Nasim Zoimim? How do the Edom either become? So when we talk about Nasim Zoimim, we can really understand it in two ways. One is, how do they become Zoimim? What's the process by which they become Zoimim? And we know from later Mishnayos and in general, the way they become Zoimim is Edom Zoimim is really a unique type of false Edom, right? Often Edom Zoimim is translated as false Edom. It's not a correct translation because Edom can be false and they're not Edom Zoimim. The Edom Zoimim is a unique type of way that they become Zoimim, which is when two other Edom come along and say, how can you two Edom say that Reuven killed Shimon at 3:00 in the afternoon on Monday? Yimona Hayisam, you were with us. It's a unique, but there's other types of false Edom where, right, if two Edom testify, two Edom are made that Reuven killed Shimon, and then two other Edom come and say, how can you say Reuven killed Shimon? Shimon's still alive, and he brings Shimon into Beis Din. So there, it's also clear that the two Edom who were made that Reuven killed Shimon are lying. Shimon's the Harug Lefonenu. But that's not Adam Zomim. Adam Zomim is a unique situation where Adam Zomim is a unique situation where two Adam contradicts the other two Adam in a specific way, where they say Imanu Hayisam. They're not contradicting the Adus. They're not contradicting the details of the Adus that he didn't kill instead of he did kill. They're saying what you're saying can't be true. What you're saying that the Adam that Reuven killed Shimon at 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, that can't be true because you were with us at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That is the unique situation. That's exactly what Adam Zomim, right? The word Zomim comes from the word plotted, that the Adam plotted to do something. But it's a unique type of falsely plotting. So it's a unique type of falsely plotting where the way they're proven wrong, so to speak, is where the second set of Adam say Imonu Hayism. I just want to say it's another really Hagdama, maybe we should have said this before we started, that it's a Chiddush. As the Gemara says in many places in Shas, that the whole Adam Zomim is a Chiddush. Why is that Chiddush? Because you have two Adam saying, let's say Reuven killed Shimon, and you have two other Adam saying, it's not true. Why is it not true? Because you were with us. But why believe, just like the first set of Adam can be lying, the second set of Adam can also be lying. Why are you believing the second set more than the first set, right? The Pasuk says, we take on that the second set of Adam are lying, are saying the truth, sorry. And the first set of Adam, who, right, the punishment is that you do to them as they plotted to do. Why are you punishing the first set of Adam? Why do you believe the second set of Adam more than the first set of Adam? So basically the Gemara in many places says it's a chiddush. The Ba'etzem, it's a chiddush. It's not something which we can understand, because normally when the two sets of Adam contradict each other, we say we believe neither. Right? In the usual case where, let's say, one set of Adam says Reuven's chayiv to Shimon, and the second set of Adam say Reuven's not chayiv to Shimon, you say it's a suffix. And whatever the rules of Sveikus, you apply the rules of Sveikus. If it's moment, so there's a rule that when you have a suffix moment, but you leave things the way they are. You don't believe one set more than the other. So something which is unique about Adam Zomim is that you believe the second set over the first set. And this is, the Gemara says in many places, chiddush. It's a chiddush. It's Xerius HaKasov. There's different reasons given by Rishonim, but ultimately the Gemara says that it's a chiddush. It's not something we understand. So that's just a B'Torah Dharma. So Kate to the Adam Nas and Zomim. How the Adam made Zomim. So there's two, really, when you say Kate to the Adam Nas and Zomim, either you could explain it to mean how do the Adam become Zomim? What's the process by which they become Zomim, which I just said is through two other Adam coming and saying to the first two, how can you testify, how can you be made when at that time when you claim the story happened, Imanu Hayisam, you were with us. Kate to the Adam Nas and Zomim also could possibly mean how do they get punished? But as we'll soon see, the Mishnah continues by saying neither of the two. Neither does it say what's the process by which the Adam becomes Zomim, nor does the Mishnah continue to say how they get punished in the normal way of Kasha Zomim. The Mishnah continues to say two exceptions by which the Adam do not get the usual punishment. Right? The usual punishment is like the pasuk says, that if you find out that the Adus is Adus Sheker, in this specific way that the Torah Sheba'al Peh explains that it means Imanu Hayisam, then the pasuk continues and says, you have to do as you do to the Adam as they plotted to do. So the two Adam tried to get Reuven killed because he said Reuven was Mechal Shabbos, or Reuven killed Shimon. So then and then they're proven wrong by another set of Adam saying Imanu Hayisam, you're with us. So those two Adam are punished in the same way that they plotted. So if they said that Reuven was Chayiv Skila, so then they get Skila. If it was Chenek, so then they get Chenek. That's normally the din of Kasha Zomim. If it's mominous, if they say that Reuven was Chayiv Shimon $100 and he wasn't, so then they have to pay. So that's the pashut of Shabbat. And the Mishnah is going to say two examples, two scenarios where the Adam don't get the punishment that they plotted. So that's why the Rashi straight away starts off. The Gemara is going to deal with these three words, but we're going to continue by just saying two exceptions where the Adam Zomim don't get the Kasha Zomim. They don't get the punishment that they try to cause the Nidin to get. So let's see the Mishnah inside. Even on the Bish Pliny, Shu ben Gerusha ben Chalutza, two Adam come along and say, the Ish Pliny, so and so, who ben Gerusha ben Chalutza, either ben Gerusha or ben Chalutza. That means that he's a Chalal. A Kohen is not allowed to marry a Gerusha. If a Kohen does marry a Gerusha, the result is that his children are Chalalim, and a Chalal is Pasol Lekuna. The Chalal doesn't get Matnes Kuna. He doesn't have the entitlement to the Matnes Kuna. And similarly, if a Kohen marries a Chalutza, so it's not Midirai. So the pasuk in the Torah just says, what's the lashon of the pasuk? Grusha Zaina v'Chalala lo yikacho. A Kohen's not allowed to marry either Grusha or Zaina or Chalala. So if he's married, he's a gerusha divorcee. So then the child's a cholo. Midoraisa, chalutza, Kohen's not allowed to marry chalutza, a woman who had chalitza done to her. That's only midrabana. So, but nevertheless, the Mishnah says, if two Adam come and say that Pliny is either ben gerusha or ben chalutza, in other words, they were trying to take a Kohen and make him possible the kuna, that he's not allowed to have the kuna, he's not allowed to get matnas kuna, he's not allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. If he has a daughter, the daughter is a chalola who's not allowed to marry a Kohen. So, ein oimrim yas is a ben gerusha ben chalutza tachto. If two Adam come along and say that so-and-so is a ben gerusha or ben chalutza, we don't say that the Adam get the same punishment that they tried to cause the person, the Nidain, but they should also become a chol. Instead, they're going to get Malchus. Like Arboim says, even though there's 39 Malchus, not 40 Malchus, but the Lashon HaPasuk is using Lashon HaPasuk. The Lashon HaPasuk is Arboim Yakenu. So it says Loik Arboim, even though it's 39. So that is the first exception. And the Gemara is going to explain there's two sides that we have to understand. The Gemara is going to explain there's two issues over here. One is why is this an exception? Normally, Adam falsely try to get something done, they get exactly the same punishment that they tried. Here it's an exception. Number two, we have to understand, even if they're not getting the same punishment, why are they getting Malchus? So the first question is going to be dealt with based on Amud Aleph, why the Eidei ben Gerusha ben Chalutza, the Adam who try to make the Nidan the Kohen, ben Gerusha ben Chalutza, and Pasal the Kuna don't get the same punishment. And the second question as to why they get Malchus is discussed on that base on the base. That's example number one. I just want to note that there's actually a Machlokes Rishonim, many Rishonim like the Ritva, and I think the Ramban as well, learn that Ben Chalutza is not really, although the Mishnah says that the Adam tried to make the Nidan, make the Kohen Ben Chalutza, say that your mother was a Chalutza and she was married to a Kohen and you were born from that union and therefore you pass the Kuna. Really, we know that Chalutza is only Ben Chalutza. Chalutza is only passed to Kohen midrabanan. So even the child is only a Chala midrabanan. So many Rishonim learn that it's impossible Adam who tried to make someone a Ben Chalutza can't be real Adam Zayimim, because from the Doraisitic perspective, from the Torah's perspective, they can't get Malchus, because from the Torah perspective, they weren't made falsely. Because from the Torah perspective, the Ben Chalutza, they didn't do anything to the Ben Chalutza. The Ben Chalutza is not really a Chalal min Torah. The Ben Chalutza is only a Chalal midrabana. So therefore, many Rishonim, the Ramban, the Ritva, I think others say that really the Mishnah is just, it's Agav. It says Ben Chalutza Agav, but really the din doesn't apply to Ben Chalutza. If two Adam come and try and say that Pliny is a Ben Chalutza, there's no Malchus. There can't be Malchus. Malchus is for trying to get someone. Malchus can only be for Doraisa. So that's what many Rishonim say. Oh, very good, very good. So I'll be honest with you, I don't understand these Rishonim. So the Rambam says, right, by the way, the Rambam writes clearly that Ben Chalutza is included. The Ramban, the Ritva, Taka say the Ben Chalutza is Agav, which means say the Mishnah is being inaccurate, really. The Mishnah is saying that two Adam who say that somebody's a Ben Chalutza get Malchus and they get the din of they have the din of Kash. Well, they get a punishment for their false Adas, but according to the Ramban and Ritva, it's not true. You try to make someone a Chalal midrabanan from a Doraistic perspective, you didn't do anything because he's not a Chalal. He's mutter to Kohana. So the fact that they can't. The Rambam, however, writes clearly that Ben Chalutza is included. The Mishnah is Dafka, and so the reason that I don't understand the reason of those who say not, but the reasoning for that is like the Aruch LaNer explains. The Aruch LaNer Tain is like what you're saying. Who cares whether the result? Who cares whether he's a Chala Midarais or Chala Midrabanan? You're causing damage to him. The Maisa, the Mitzvah says it doesn't matter the din, but he's a Chala Midarais or Chala Midrabanan. The din, the Maisa, you're causing him a hazard. He's not going to be able to get matnas kuna, let's say, or he's not going to be able to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. His children are going to be chalalim. That's the practical. Who cares the Raisa Draban? And you cause someone a hazard, right? If you cause someone to lose money, it doesn't make a difference whether he loses that money. It's a mitzias. The mitzias is that. Huh? No, Raisa, you're punishing him. He's because he's damaging somebody. Who cares how he's damaging? The damage is the Draban and damage. The damage, right? So that Adrab, I never understood I don't understand the other Rishonim who said that Ben Chalutza is lav dafka ba'akopanim. That's Aruch LaNer spells it out very nice. If you want to look it inside, that who cares? Who cares? You're causing him damage. You don't have to make him a chalois din that he's a chalal deraisa in order for you to be an eid zoymim midaraisa. You're causing him damage. So if you're causing him damage, you're causing him damage. Okay. Yeah. Why? The Gzeres HaKosov is that we believe two Eidim who say that you plotted to do something to someone else. It doesn't matter what that doing was. You're going to hurt him. You're going to. The second example given is Me'idin on it. So I'll just point out one other thing is that maybe we'll discuss when we get to the Gemara, that in the Tosefta adds others. The Tosefta adds other Yisurei Kal. I didn't see the Tosefta inside, but the Tosefta adds Mamzer as well. But the same thing would apply to Mamzer. Me'idin on a bish plainish who Mamzer, right? If you two Adam come into Beis and say plain is a Mamzer, Ein Oimrim Yas is a bet Mamzer Tachtov, Eloi Karban. Tosefta asks the question, why does our Mishnah not say Mamzer? Yeah, maybe we'll quickly discuss it now. So there's a number of answers given. One answer given. So it seems everyone takes for granted that the din would apply to mamzer theoretically. In other words, for sure, if two Adam come and say Pliny is a mamzer, so it should be that they should also be a mamzer. Okay. So very good. So first of all, why does that not apply to cholol as well? You're right. When I was learning the Mishnah the first time, I was like, I don't understand the first half of the Mishnah. Cholol. Me'idin on a bi'ish plaini shul cholol. I'm being made that he's a cholol. So I'm not. Eid zoymim, eid possible. If this is what you're saying, I think this is what you're saying. I can explain your question a little bit better, but I think this is what you're saying. That when you make somebody, when we talk about eid zoymim, an eidus is a din. You're saying that someone's chai of money. You're saying somebody's Chayev Misa, Chayev Momen, Chayev Golos, Chayev Malkus, that makes sense. But to say that someone's a Cholol or someone's a Mamza, so L'chura, it's not shaykh to the whole Torah of Eidin Zomim. There's no Havamina B'chlal, they should have Asisim Loikasha Zomim. It's not a din. It's that the Eidim are not coming testifying a din. They're saying, right? They're saying, so why should there be a difference between a Mamza and a Cholol? If the Eidim are, we'll get that in a minute. Yeah. So I'm talking about, let's presume that the Edom are Klein. So there's a discussion about Mamza. So you could make a distinction between Mamza and Cholol and say, no, Cholol is understood because Cholol, at the end of the day, you're trying to do something, besides for making him a Cholol that he's a din and he's pasal ikuna, you're also making him lose his truma, his matonis. There was a hashlacha to it, like a damage. It wasn't just a din. So some Akrainim actually say that. Some Akrainim say, I think Gileoni Hashas maybe at the back, some Akrainim actually say that, yeah, Mamza, there's no Havamina. That's one approach. Another approach, Pnei Yisroel says something interesting, which is that theoretically, it's impossible theoretically. Pnei Yisroel says that you can't make somebody a Mamza. Why not? Because if you're talking about a Penuya, someone who's unmarried, and you're going to say that she had relations with, let's say, a brother or another Chayve Krisus, so and therefore the child's a Mamza, you can't prove that. Maybe she was Mazana with many people. And if she's married, so then there's a klal roi b'ilas achar abal. There's a klal that even if you saw even if you're going to testify that the woman was mizana, we say that roi b'ilas achar abal. Most of the time she was with her husband, and therefore the child the child is assumed to be the husband's child. So the Pnei Yisroel argues that there isn't like.
And it is clear. I mean, unless if he's traveling for.
Oh, very good. Okay, yeah, exactly. So that's what the Pnei Yisroel says. The oracle there kind of is what you're saying. That if he was traveling, and ultimately, either way, these two answers don't really add up because the Tosefta says Mamza. The Tosefta says Mamza. So the Tosefta says Mamza. You're going to say there's Machlokes in the Tosefta. The Tosefta says Mamza. The Mishnah omits it. All the Rishonim seem to have the question, why not Mamza? So Pnei Yisroel's answer, or the other answer that I gave, that is not shy because it's a din, doesn't seem to be ultimately the real answer because the Tosefta says Mamza, number one. And number two, all the Rishonim don't take on this answer. So there's a number of Tosfos deals with it. Tosfos in the bottom of Divrei Maskal Me'idin. Yash Ledakdei, towards the end of Me'idin on, the first Tosfos on the page, the Tosfos Taka asks this question, and ultimately he answers because we're talking about Zoymi Bas Kohen. We'll soon see in the Gemara that the Gemara Makkos is continuing a discussion in Sanhedrin about the Bas Kohen. So we're involved in Inyani Kona. So we say also.
It seemed based on what you said about the Rambam that he haskins that you're chayev malchus midaraisa for telling for this about a kol or
Ben Chalutza, yeah.
That shows that we're talking about practical damage. So if you call someone a mamzer, Eidos in court, you're affecting them. They can't marry certain people.
Right.
It's all about the damage. It's not about it's not about the din of the person. It's about what you're causing them.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear. Yeah. So that's ultimately that's what Taisa says. In other words, the din would be true by mamzer. Also, other Rishonim said it's more common. I don't know if that applies. You could even say that nowadays, but the halal is more common than mamzer. Okay. So let's continue. Or let's do Rashi actually. Let's do Rashi because this points to something that Yossi was saying. They're being made about someone that is a ben grusha. So obviously we're talking about kohen, meaning that the person they're testifying about is a kohen. So einoim shehu ben grusha. Sorry. They're being made shehu ben grusha. B'fanenu niskar she'im koydem shenoila. Rashi says that how are they being made that he's a ben grusha? How do they know that he's ben grusha? So the testament, the edus has to be that we know that the mother was divorced before the child was born, and he's a chal. Tosfos Yom Tov points out that obviously Rashi doesn't literally mean before he was born, because it's not good enough for the child to be born after she was divorced. The child has to be born. The child has to have been conceived. The heroine has to have been after the divorce, right? We're trying to say that the child's a cholol. How is the child a cholol? If if someone we know is a kohen,
Either he's a chal or a mamzer. If she was divorced before he was born, her previous husband was also kohen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we have a child who's a kohen. He's miyuchas as a kohen, and two Edom are coming and saying that his mother was divorced before he was born. So the Tosfos Yom Tov explains it to him, but before he was before the heroine. So ein oimrim. So we say this is an exception. It's not the classical case where the Edom get the punishment. Ein oimrim im huzmu ve'ein kohenim. If the Edom become huzam, they become proven to be false through imone yisam. Ve'ein kohenim. Right? Rashi adds the ve'ein kohenim. Yes, that if they were kohenim, then I would have a havamina that perhaps they should become a ben grusha ben chalutza. So if the Edom are kohenim, so then we don't say yasa ben grusha ben chalutza lekaim by kasha zamim to fulfill kasha zamim. Elo soifikas arba migram price time. Get Makkos instead.
So I guess the havamina would be that if they were Yisroel, then they would get Makkos. But if they're a kohen, maybe they should have because they're a chal.
Yeah, something like this. It seems as if Rashi is learning that if they were Yisraelim, then it would be clear that you can't do kasha zaman because you can't. Metzias of a chal is only shaykh by a kohen. At the end of the day, metzias of a chal is only shaykh by a kohen. Especially if you learn that, like, I'm thinking aloud now. I'm not. I'm saying this b'liach rayas, just direct after but I didn't see this inside anywhere. But especially if you say that the main issue over here is being mafsid, making, let's say, pasul avoida, or being the guys Yisroel, the Edom are Yisroel. You're not doing kasha zaman. It only really makes sense kasha zaman if the Edom are kohenim and they're trying to make the kohen into a chal. The Ritva does quote in the name of Tosfos, or Pirush Rabbi Tosfos, it's not a Tosfos that we have in front of us, that even if it's a Yisroel, it's also shaykh to make him a chalal. It's also shaykh to make him a chalal. He's not really married as to why and how. He just says one thing that because a chalal is poistless ishtai. A chalal who his wife can't marry Kohana either, not just his children. Chalal's wife can't marry Kohana, so therefore, yeah. Okay, so that's example number one. Second thing the Mishnah says, if two Edom come and say that he's chayiv golos, so we don't say that if they become zoimim that they should get golos. Rashi says, shechayiv golos shaharek zanepesh b'shoigid. We know someone who kills b'shoigid gets golos. They claim that the nidon killed somebody b'shoigid. They've then proven wrong. We don't say that they get golos, they get Makkos instead. So that's the Mishnah. And there's just one other thing that I wanted to say, which was related to this issue of the mamzer. Okay, maybe we'll say it later if we have time. We have to move. Okay, so it says the Gemara like this. So the Gemara is going to ask the kasha, which is l'chora bothering us all. The words Ketzad Eidem Nasim means how Eidem becomes Zomim. The Mishnah doesn't say the classical case of how Eidem becomes Zomim. The Mishnah doesn't say the classical case. It doesn't say not the process of how they become Zomim, nor does it say the punishment. It actually says an exception where Eidem Zomim don't get punished the usual way. So the Gemara straight away asks, "How Ketzad Ein Eidem Nasim Zomim Baile?" First good question the Gemara asks is that l'chura the Mishnah shouldn't have said Ketzad or Eidim Nasim Zaimim. The Mishnah should have said Ketzad Ein Eidim Nasim Zaimim. How are the Eidim not made Zaimim? They're not getting punished with the Kasha Zamam Nasis La'achav with the same punishment that they plotted to do to their friend. That's question number one. Says Rashi, Ketzad Ein Eidim Nasim Zaimim Yoile. The Haloi Mekayim is Bu Kasha Zam. You not be Mekayim by them Kasha Zam. Second question, V'oid. And I'll just, for the moment, I'll just read it without explaining, and we'll see Rashi. Because this second question is a little tricky, what exactly the Gemara is saying. The Gemara later on, so the Mishnah, the next Mishnah later on, says as follows. The Mishnah is there discussing what's considered Hazama. That in order for Hazama, there has to be the following. There has to be Manu Yisem. So the Gemara says, Avol, in a case where Amru lahem, where the second set of Eidim say to the first set of Eidim, how can you be made that such and such happened on such and such a day and such a time, which by the way, every Eidus has to have the time and the day in order that they can be proven wrong, right? In order for the Eidus to be proven wrong, there has to be, so they're saying, the set of Eidim is saying, let's say Reuven killed Shimon at a certain day, a certain time, and the second set of Eidim are saying, "Hey, that time of day, that day you were with us somewhere else." These are considered zaymim. I'm going to read it without the brackets, without the parentheses. The Marshal takes it out, but we'll explain the Gemara without the parentheses. So that's that's the second question of the Gemara. What's the question? Let's see Rashi. Rashi says like this. The second question of the Gemara is, the first question of the Gemara is, we're talking about a case where the Eidim are not being made zayim. The second question is, it says Rashi, what's the Tana asking over here? How are they made zayim? In other words, the Gemara over here obviously is not asking how the din zayim is, because later we ask what's the din of Zayim. In the Mishnah later says, if the Mazimim, the ones who are proving the first set of Eidim wrong, say the following, how can you testify, how can you be made this Eidus, you were with us that day in such and such a place, and there was in a different location where so the way I understand Rashi is, Rashi's a little bit sossum. Rashi doesn't explain exactly what the second kasha is. But what Rashi does say is that how can the Mishnah say Kates are the Eidim Nasim Zayim, how are Eidim made Zayim, as if it's going to explain to you how the Eidim Nasim Zayim. That's done later. Later the Mishnah says how the Eidim are made Zayim. The way the Ritva explains it, and he says that this is possible, what Rashi's saying as well, he explains it based on what I said earlier, that the Gemara is really saying two things. Number one, the Gemara is saying that even if you say Kates the Eidim Nasim Zayim means how the Eidim punished, how do they become Zayim, how they punished as Zayim, it doesn't come and say the classical case of how they get punished. It talks about when they're not punished, Kasha Zayim. The second question is that even the whole Lashon, even if it would say Eino Eidim Nasim Zayim, it wouldn't stem. Because Kates the Eidim Nasim Zayim really means, when you say how Eidim become Zayim, you're talking about the process by which they become Zayim, which means that two other Eidim come and say Imon Yisam, and that's discussed later on. That's how the Ritva explains. Whether you can fit into Rashi, I'm not sure. But the second question of the Gemara is that without getting too involved, the second question is that how can the Mishnah over here say Kates the Eidim Nasim, how the Eidim made Zayim, when that's dealt with later? That's dealt with later. We wouldn't ask the same question twice. That's dealt with later. And if you want to add the Ritva's Knech, and what you're basically saying is that we see from the Mishnah over there that the term Zayim refers to the process of how they become Zayim, and you're not talking about the process at all over here, you're talking about the punishments. We have two questions. Question number one of the Gemara is the Lechura. Question number one is the Lechura Ketzad Eino Eidim Nasim Zayim Ba'ile. The Gemara should have said how the Eidim not become Zayim, because we're doing something different than usual. They're not getting the Kasha Zaman punishment. They're not getting the as they plotted punishment. Next question number two is that Ketzad Eidim Nasim Zayim usually is understood to mean what's the process by which they become Zayim. And we see later in the Mishnah, Hari Elu Zayim, the case of Zayim is when they say Imon Yisam, that's how they become Zayim. Okay, so that's the two questions of the Gemara. So the Gemara answers that Tana Hasam Koi. Gemara's answer is Bechlalos that this Mishnah can't be read by itself. Mishnah can't be read in isolation from the previous Masechta. It has to be read as a continuation of Masechta Sanhedrin. And we need to add one extra thing, that the Perek Chelek, the last Perek of Sanhedrin, Kol Yisrael Yashem Chel L'Olam Haba, is somehow an appendix to Masechta Sanhedrin. It's somehow not really part of Sanhedrin. And the last Perek of Sanhedrin is Perek HaNechnokin. And then in the last Mishnah of the last Perek of Sanhedrin, besides for Kol Yisrael Yashem Chelek, you have a Mishnah which says the following. Yeah, Tana Hasam Koi. Our Mishnah Hasam Koi is going back to the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, where the Mishnah over there says, Kol hazoymim min makdimin la'oisa misa, chutz mizoymim mibaskoyin u'boyala, she'ein makdimin la'oisa misa, ela l'misa acheres. That all zoymim get the exact same misa as they plotted, which means to say that when two Edom come and say that Pliny is chayav misa, and then they get proven false through the Iman HaYisam process, not only do they get killed just like they planned on getting the Nidon killed, but the exact same type of death. So if they were made that someone's Mechal Shabbos, so they'll get skila. If they were made that the Reuven killed Shimon and they were proven false through Iman HaYisam, so then they'll get chenek, like they didn't by somebody hereg, like Messiah. They'll get the misa which somebody who killed who someone's a Ritzeach gets, so, with a certain exception. Besides for the situation of the Zoymimim, the Edom Zoymimim who tried to get a Bas Kohen to, they said that a Bas Kohen, a daughter of a Kohen, was Mizana, or Boyala and her Boyal. And in such a case where they tried to get a Bas Kohen, what's the din by a Bas Kohen? The din is a Bas Kohen who's Mizana is different than a regular Eishes Ish. A Bas Kohen who's an Eishes Ish is different than a regular Eishes Ish. A regular Eishes Ish gets Chenek for being Mizana, Tachas Baila, and a Bas Kohen gets Chenek. But it only applies, and the Bas Kohen gets Shreifa. But it only applies to the Bas Kohen. The Boyal, the man who was involved in Avera, gets Chenek just like every regular Boil Eishes, someone who's Boil Eishes Ish, just like the regular din of Eishes Ish. So the Gemara over here says that when the Mishnah over there, the end of Sanhedrin is saying that although generally speaking, the Edom Zoymim get the exact same Misa that they plotted, there's an exception to the case. When two Edom come and testify about a Bas Kohen and a Boil, the Bas Kohen Eishes Ish who's being Mizana. So even though really, what should be the Edom Zoymim's punishment? Should they get straight for like the Bas Kohen, or the Chenek like the Boil, if they're being made about both? What's the Mulchama? Streifa, yeah. So that's l'chor pshat, that they should get streifa because streifa is the more chamor of the two. Nevertheless, there's a special pasuk that we learn out from that it's not the case. So the Mishnah says that this is an exception. Besides for the zoymim meibas kohen or boiler she'ei makdimin la'oisam misa elo lemisa acheres. That in such a case, the Edom Zoymim don't get that misa, they don't get streifa, they get misa acheres, they get chenek, they get the misa of the boil. And we'll see Rashi in a minute. So now the Gemara is explaining that this Mishnah comes in continuation, behemshach, to that Mishnah over there. That Mishnah is already talking about exceptions where the Edom don't get the regular kasha zamam. So the Mishnah, the Gemara is explaining now, v'yesh Edom Zoymim ma'acherim. The Gemara is explaining what the Mishnah is doing. Our Mishnah over here. Our Mishnah, Ketzad Edom Nasim Zoym, is saying, Ketzad Ha Edom, how are those Edom that we discussed in the previous Mishnah who don't get proper Kasha Zamam? So how do they get punished? So we know the Edom in that Mishnah, the Mishnah itself says that they get Chenek instead of Shreifa. But what about other Edom? Other Edom were in that same category that they don't get the exact Kasha Zamam. How do they get punished? In other words, the Mishnah says, now other types of Edom, that they don't get they don't get kasha zamim at all. Ela Makkos arba'im, they only get Makkos, and that's the question. Ketzad, how are such Edom being punished? So the Mishnah continues. To summarize, the Gemara asks two questions, right? So l'chora, it's Eino Edom Nasim Zoymim V'Oilei. And the process by which it becomes Zoymim is discussed later. If the Chura, that's what we're kind of expecting. If you say Kate say Nasim Zoymim, you expect me to you expect the Mishnah to continue by saying how do they become Zoymim? What's the process by which they become Edom Zoymim? So the Gemara is answering. You have to understand. You can't read this Mishnah in isolation from the previous Mishnah. The previous Mishnah, meaning at the end of Masechta Sanhedrin, says that there's an exception to the case of Eidim Zomim. The exception is the case is where they don't get the exact same Misa that they plotted. The exception is Zomim Bas Kohen or Boyalo, that you have two Eidim who come and say that Bas Kohen was Mizana, and he's right, and Bas Kohen was Mizana with the boil, and they're trying to be Mechayev two Misas, one of Shreifa and one of Chenek, and we say that although they should really get Shreifa because it's the most Chamor, they get Chenek. Now the Mishnah is continuing saying you should know there's some other Eidim which also fall into that category where they don't get the exact Kashazam. In fact, they don't get Kashazam at all. They don't get the same punishment that they plotted at all. And the question is, how do those Eidim get punished? If he said that Nasim Zoimim, how do you read into the words? Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. I remember this is from Girsa the Yankusa, that it was explained of it. I think maybe the Ritva says, I'm not sure. Maybe other Rishonim, someone else says. The way I remember it is Kate said hot Eidim. How are those Eidim which we were discussing earlier, and we're adding to that category? You know, there's Kate said hot Eidim. How are those Eidim who don't get Kashazamim, like we mentioned in the previous Mishnah, Nasim Zoimim, how are they punished? The word Zoimim here would mean not how they get Kashazam, how they punished. The Ritva, now I'm just remembering now, that the Ritva Taka says it doesn't fit into the words. The Mishnah saying Kate said Eidim Nasim, how do the Eidim become Zoimim? And then the Mishnah is taking a pause from its question of Kate said Eidim Nasim Zoimim and saying, going back to the Mishnah previously where we discussed Zoimim Bas Kohen, and saying that there's other. Yeah. And then the next Mishnah when it says Avol Amru Lahem, that's coming back to the question. But I do remember such a pshat that you could fit into the words by saying Ketzat HaEdim, how are those Eidim that we're discussing in the previous Mishnah, that category of Eidim, how do they become punished when we don't give them Kashazamim at all? And the answer is that we give them Makkos, and the two exceptions mentioned in the Mishnah, Ben Grusha, Ben Chalutza, and Golos. So let's see Rashi. Rashi says, Tana Hasam Kai, Misanhedrin Salik. The Mishnah is the Ramaskal Hasam Kai. Rashi says Misanhedrin Salik. We're coming from Sanhedrin. The Mishnah at the end of Perik Eilein and Nachnakin says the Husiyumed the Sanhedrin, which Rashi says that is the end of Sanhedrin. The Yash Zoimim Shenishtan v'Mixas Midin Azama. That there in the Mishnah we see that there's some types of Zoimim who have a difference in a little bit, a slight difference from the Din Azama. Kediktoni, like the Mishnah says over there, Kol HaZoimim Makdimin La'oisa Misa. Kol HaZoimim Makdimin La'oisa Misa. It's an interesting lashon in the Mishnah. Kol HaZoimim, all the Zoimim Makdimim. Makdimim means that you kind of rush them to that Misa. So Rashi explains, Kiloima, the lashon Makdimim, Ein Lehem Letzapes Misa Charis, meaning they shouldn't expect any other type of Misa. Ela Mashkimin La'oisa Misa Shenigmar Ba'din Shanil. We give them straight away. They shouldn't expect to get another type of Misa, but we give them the Misa, which the exact type of Misa that the Beis Din paskind with regards to the Niddah. Chutz, with the exception of Zoimim Bas Kohen. The exception of Zoimim Bas Kohen. So Rashi explains, Nesua, we're talking about Bas Kohen who's married. Even though the Eidim managed to get the Beis Din to paskin that the woman gets Sreifa because she's a Bas Kohen, Heim Bechenik, the Eidim get Chenek, the Alpin and Hossam. Now Rashi explains what's the reason, Taka. Why Taka do Zoimim Bas Kohen not get Sreifa, which is the more Chamar Dika Einish. So the Alpin and the Gemara over there explains in Sanhedrin, he Bisreifa ve'ein boila Bisreifa. Ela Bechenik Yishar Eisheslish. That she gets Sreifa, ve'ein boila Bisreifa. Sorry, we haven't explained. Zoimim Mashkim and Lemisa Shechiva Saboya. There's a pasuk says hiti sarif. I think the pasuk says hiti sarif. So now we learn that the woman gets reifa, but the boil gets chenek. Now there's another step which means that the zoimim get the same einish as the boil. They don't get the same einish as the woman, as the Bas Kohen. So now Rashi continues. The zoimim get that misa which they try to be mechayev the boil. So Rashi explains. I mean, it's the Gemara over there, but Rashi is telling us that the reason why the Zoimim Bas Kohen don't get the exact Misa that they try to get the Bas Kohen is because the pasuk says like this: "Vasisim kashazomim lasus la'achiv." Right? That you do to him, you do to the Eidim as they plotted to do la'achiv. You could have just said "Vasisim kashazomim lasus." What's up to la'achiv to the brother? Right? We know the din would apply to a woman the same. If it were made that a woman was mechal Shabbos, it doesn't get skila. What's up is la'achiv. So the Gemara dashes la'achiv v'loy la'achaysa. Where there's a situation where you have a choice between giving the einish, which was to the achiv, to the boil, or to the achoisai, right, or to the woman. So then you give the achiv v'loy lachos. I just want to pause it for a moment because there's a big machlokes rishonim. What's going on over here? The pashta pshat in the Gemara and seemingly from Rashi over here as well is that we're talking about a situation. The Zomim Bas Kohen were made both about the Bas Kohen and about the boil. But there could be a situation, be many situations. I'll give you an example where they were only being made about the Bas Kohen. Because, for example, the din of Eishes Ish is that if she was mezana with anyone even older than 9 years old, the woman is an Eishes Ish. But you're not going to punish the boil because the boil is less than bar mitzvah, so he's not bar ancient. So, but there's other situations where they only were made about. But either way, what would be in a situation where they were only made about the woman? The Pashta Pshat in the Mishnah, the Pashta reading, shall we say, of the Mishnah, Chutz Mizoyim Bas Kohen U'Boyala, and the same thing in Rashi, is mashma that we're talking about a situation when the Eidim were made about both. So you've got a choice. Should we give Shreifa? Should we give Chenek? And I would have said it should be Shreifa because that's the most Chamor. So we give Chenek because of the Pasuk Lasis La'achiv V'Loy Lachos. Right? In other words, when you have a choice of giving the Einish of the Achiv or the Einish of the Achosai, you give the Einish of the Achiv. But if it was only, right? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. There's two options. Yeah, but that's talking. Yeah, but the Lashon Makdimin really is Kol HaZaymin. We're talking about that's the rule, not here. Chutz Mizaymin Bas Kohen. She'ein Makdimin La'Oisa Misa. Yeah, he still uses Lashon Makdimin. Yeah, could be. Yeah. Hear what you're saying. So that's and that kind of is simpler to explain, I think. In other words, that there's an achiv and there's a chois. So you try to get the achiv connect, you try to get the chois, you try to get the bas kohen to get streifa. So you have a choice between the two. Lule the pasuk la'achiv v'lo la'chois. I would have said that you give streifa, which is the most common. That's always the din. If you have two einshim, then you get the right. You get streifa. Two options. You should get streifa, not connect. Kasha zaman because giving as they plotted. The pasuk la'achiv tells me la'achiv lo la'chois. But if I'm not mistaken, Tosfos and other Rishonim argue, and they say no. Even in a situation where you only plotted, you were only being made on the woman. Let's say the boil was less than bar mitzvah. The same din would apply as well. You can it comes out from Tosfos because there's another. It's alvia he mechalelas. The pasuk says with regards to bas kohen he v'loy boyala he v'loy zomim now. There's another pasuk. It's not. It's if the only pasuk which would be the drasha would be lasisim lo'kashazam lasis la'achiv, then maybe it would make sense that it's lasis la'achiv v'loy la'chois. You're trying to do something to both la'achiv and la'choisai, and you give the punishment of the achiv and not the la'choisai. But there's another pasuk from which we learn out this din as well. Why we need both pasukim. Tosfos explains. We're not going to get into now. He v'loy boyala, but he v'loy zomim now. That the pasuk which talks about the bas kohen excludes the zomim from her einish, which would exclude them in any event. More length, yeah. So let's just continue in Rashi. The Mishnah over here is saying that there's other zomim who we don't do hazama at all. Klal elamalkus v'alam mefarish keitzad oisana edim she'ein mekayim medin hazama. Rashi is definitely trying to fit into the words over here. Yeah, you asked before how it fits into the words. Yeah, what's his name? Levi, huh?
Yeah, I was actually thinking.
Yeah, so Rashi, yeah, go on.
No, I'm saying what you're saying here. Like kids are we were talking about before that they don't have zamas.
Right. So I think Rashi is trying. But Alam Mefarish Keitzad Oisana Edim She'ein Mekayim Medin Hazama. How are those Edim who don't Mekayim Din Hazama Nasim Zayimim? You have to explain.
We don't do Din Hazama. So what do we?
Yeah, how they become Zayimim? How are they? I think you still have to say how they punished or how they. It doesn't fit clear into the words. Because normally, Kate the Adam, because you don't really deal properly with the second question of the Gemara, or the way the Ritva explained it. Kate the Adam Nasim Zayim sounds like how the Adam become Zayim, not how they punish, not how do we punish them as Zayim.
Not how they treated as
Okay, L'chora, you're going to have to Balkarka say something to that effect, yeah? How do they become Zayim? In other words, how they treated, how do you punish them? How do you treat them? Yeah, okay. So that's the Gemara. So let's just continue a little bit further. It's okay. We can use 9:15, or should we stop and continue next time and just to get over the page? Stop over there. Okay. Fine. Yeah. I was thinking maybe in future. I'm still working it out exactly how long it takes and everything. But in future, maybe even if the last 5, if you can move maybe a little bit faster through the Amud and the last 5-10 minutes, we can have questions and discussion. Maybe that's a way of doing it as well. Whatever, you can let me know. Just thinking.
We're all figuring this out.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, Shikaya.
Of course it should go.
Right, that's also
Don't
true.
forget the
Yeah, yeah.
questions.
It has to be totally.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, there were people here.